You're sick. All of you. Try and stop me. Keep me from Nora. But I'll save her. Protect her. From you.
Alright, so here we are in the Ocean Divers Port level. As you can see on the profiler, we have our portals and our AK spatial audio volumes set up to identify the different sonic environments that we're in. I'm transitioning into the dining room, which has a whole different audio space, which is also different from the bathroom that it houses. Okay, so next we'll be going over how we implemented our character footsteps, and within Wwise we created a switch container to tell whether we are running or walking. And then within these switch containers, essentially we divided up the different material types of the floors, and we placed random containers within each of them to provide some variation between the different footstep sounds. We linked all of these switch containers to our switches, so we have a switch for whether we're running or walking and all the different ground materials here. And then last but not least, we have our character jumping, landing, and footsteps events for when they're ready to be played in actuality. Here in Unreal, how we set it up is that we created a blend space similar to our swimming, so whether we're walking, running in any sort of direction, you should be able to hear it. And then similar to our swim locomotion, we have our AN walk for all of these animations. Essentially, it's working a little bit differently from the anim notify for swimming. But essentially we're reading the ground material that the player has on the bottom of their feet by editing. If this is the level and we have our ground material set to this, for example, we could call this concrete. So for every single ground material that's in the level, or should we say asset, because we are using modular assets, we're able to create a socket within each of these assets and identify, put an identifier in a place of a socket and call it concrete to make sure that we have the most accurate ground material for Wwise to pick up. There are some exceptions. So for this piece in particular, we have these metal stairs here, and we created a bypass class called BP surface type override to override the surface type whenever we see fit. So if the player was to step anywhere within this box, instead they would see rusty metal. So let's go into that class real quick. It has one variable called ground material, and it has an enumerator for all the different ground materials. And essentially what we're doing is we're beginning the overlap, and then we are setting an override based on that ground material and sending it out to the player diver. So whenever the player diver is triggering the event to play a footstep sound, what we're doing is we're getting the floor material, which is going to the BP player diver, and it's going to check if we're overriding. If we are overriding, then we're going to follow this function, which is called override material switch. Override material switch is basically going to get our override ground material, which is being set by whichever ground material has been changed last, and we're going to switch on that ground material, and depending on which one it is, we're going to set the Wwise switch to that ground material, whether it is tile, rusty metal, concrete, or platinum. But that's specifically if we're overriding. If we're not overriding, then that means whatever the ground material is set on the static mesh, the modular static mesh, is the one that we want to use. So in this case, it would be concrete. So if in this example, override would be false, we would go to switch ground material. And then over here, we would get the mesh and create a line trace. For those of you that are more familiar with Unity, you would know this as like a ray trace. But we're creating a line trace, and then if we get a hit on something below us, we're going to read the socket of that static mesh, and if the static mesh of concrete exists, then we're going to set the switch to concrete. But if it fails, it's going to check the next statement to see if it's metal rust, and so on and so forth, until we finally get to the only other possible answer, which is tile. So yeah, that's how our footsteps are implemented into the game.
Halberts the Greedies wreaking havoc throughout the land, ruined towns, destroyed pound cake forests, and nanites in despair, all desperate for one final hope. For Crumble Town, that hope may come from a traveling merchant nanite. That's you, by the way. History cannot be allowed to repeat itself. The key to Crumble Town rests in your hands. You'll save the nanites, won't you? Welcome to Crumble Party!